we are going to be discussing the book Supreme Revelations, written by Kassan I. Supreme, also Kassan the Jeweler. All right, so if everyone can give a warm welcome to our good brother Kassan the Jeweler. So I'm going to take an opportunity to read a bit of his biography and also get into a little bit about the book. Okay, so Kassan I. Supreme, aka Kassan the Jeweler, is a singer, songwriter, producer, entrepreneur, scientist, chef, martial artist, and author, and he is here to share his insight within the realm of knowledge, wisdom, and supreme understanding. With this new release of Supreme Revelations, this book is a masterful compilation of philosophical essays, a thesis which covers a span of over 25 years of study and research, exploring knowledge of self on its deepest level by removing the yoke of religious dogma and breaking the shell of ignorance, discarding the white cloud of deception, misinformation, by revealing the egg of truth, unraveling the mysteries, the myth stories of the universe. Proper education always corrects errors, and that's peace. So if you actually were to read this, you would see that there's different spellings of words. That's why I tried to emphasize, and even acronyms. So we have proper education always corrects errors. We look at the cover of the book here. We have several symbols on the cover of this book. That's what attracted me to this book when he approached us about carrying it here at the store. I was attracted. I saw that there was the star, the crescent moon. There was a pyramid with the eye of Heru or Horus, what's known as the Star of David, the cross, E equals MC squared, and even some other symbols. I think you have to explain these other two symbols here. I'm not sure what they are. I think it may be a Hindu symbol or something to that effect. But he's going to have an opportunity to explain all of the symbols here and all of the essays that he has here in the book. So without further ado, I want to allow Brother Kassan to say anything he wants to say about himself. And I think let's start off with, can you describe the cover of the book? Start by describing the cover of the book, and I'm going to hold it up.
Mic check, mic check. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate y'all joining us today. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. This is actually my first book event, but I'm gonna act like I did this many times before. Alright, the cover. Alright, so the cover has different symbolisms on it. So as he said, has the eye of Horus within a pyramid, has the crescent moon and star, which is symbolic to Islam. We also have a depiction of Buddha from Buddhism. Star of David, or the Moga Dawit, Shield of David, the cross from Christianity, and the symbol for Om, for the Om, the OHM. And then, of course, E equals MC squared, which is symbolic to science. Now, all of this together within the center is a picture of a man with the number 1, which basically is depicting the truth overlaps, the oneness in everything. So we could say Allah, for instance. So the root word of Allah is all. So that's the all. So when all things, that's the oneness. And if you break up the word Allah into 2 words, actually 2 words, Al and La, which is the source of everything in life. So again, the oneness. So I particularly don't subscribe to any one particular theology or school of thought, because I once immersed myself in pretty much all of them along my journey. I just had the honor and the privilege of turning 50 years old in Ghana. So yeah, I said for my 50th, I want to be out there, and it's a monumental born day for me. So I'm saying that to say, I've been on this journey for a long time, since I say about 1988. And we'll wait for the other questions, but that's to answer your first question. The symbolism on here is basically the many signs and symbols that I have immersed myself along my way in my journey. And I've come to learn that the truth overlaps and everything is in one, and one is in everything. Peace.
Peace, peace. I appreciate that. And that gets us to the purpose of the book, which is to shed more light on everyday occurrences, as you say here in the in your book. You say the purpose of this book is to have the reader to take a second look at everyday reality. Signs and symbols are used to put before us every day of our lives. You know, and I ask that you just take time to look at, as you say in the book, to just look at things with new eyes. So can you? That's why I wanted to go over the symbols. So can you get into, a little elaborate on the purpose of this book and helping us to how is reading this book going to impact our everyday lives and seeing things from a different standpoint?
So basically, the purpose of the book was, like I said, to show and prove the oneness in all things, that we are more alike than separate at the end of the day. Two things that I've noticed, like, I don't want to say in America per se, but just in general sociology, two subjects people that are touchy to people, which is religion and politics. So at one time I used to be out there debating everybody. Oh, this show, mine's better, that. But everybody gonna believe what they want to believe at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, if you ain't causing harm to others or yourself, then whatever works for you, because there's many paths to the same goal at the end of the day. So Marcus Garvey, I read a book, Theologies, Opinions and Philosophies of Marcus Garvey. And in that book, he said, if you can't find good company, the next best thing is to find a good book. Because when you get a book, it's like you're spending time with the author. So this is basically just sitting down with me, chopping it up, and we just basically talking about different religions and how alike that we are. So many, like, the way I formulated this book, right, was so it could be easily digestible. And it's just, I call it the beginner's guide to mind expansion. So it's gonna make you scratch the surface to make you want more. I actually have another book that I'm coming out with after this called 40 Days in the Wilderness. I also am a graduate of film school. I graduated film school 2 years ago, and I'm working on a documentary called Seeking to Find Who or What is God. So it's a journey for yourself, but it's also my own personal journey and what I've learned along the way. So if you're somebody like me that likes philosophy, theology, and just spark, I like to say, spark a thought, vibrate a brain cell. So if you're somebody like that, you're gonna love this book. So that was the purpose of putting the book together.
Spark a thought, vibrate a brain cell. Yeah, you have a lot of nice sayings like that throughout the book. And I want to get into your upbringing, your journey. You alluded to it. And I know you talk about it a little bit here in the book. You said 1988, it was junior high school in New York, where you came in contact with brothers from the 5%,
Yes,
5% Nation. So can you explain your journey and at the same time also enlighten those who may not really be familiar with 5%?
Okay. So yeah, that was actually, I want to say that the foundation of it, I'm Jamaican, so I grew up around a lot of Rastas. So Rasta was really my foundation. So I already had some type of inkling of knowledge of self, but it wasn't to this degree until junior high school, like you said. I met a brother by the name of Divine and Majestic. Peace be unto the brother Divine. Divine passed away 2 years ago, but he taught me everything as far as this is concerned, even how to write music and all of that. He was very instrumental in my upbringing. But what attracted me to them was the fact that they were young, powerful, and intelligent. So in the book, I speak about how every day they used to erase the board, because we had a class, right? and the teacher would work at another school. So she was a couple minutes late, like let's say 15, 20 minutes late when she was time to come to our classroom. So these brothers used to come in, erase the board, and put today's mathematics is. I'm like, yo, because the foundation of 5% is mathematics. So mathematics, for every number, there's a value. Every alphabet, there's a value. So today is the 12th. So 1 is knowledge, 2 is wisdom. 1 plus 2 is 3, and 3 is understanding. So you would say today's mathematics is knowledge, wisdom, all being born to understanding. And somebody would take turns, you'd have a circle, somebody would build on knowledge. Knowledge is the basic foundation of all things in existence. Knowledge is the key to unlock all those unawareness. Wisdom is the wise words of one possessing a wise dawn. Wisdom is symbolic to a woman. Wisdom is symbolic to water. And then understanding is symbolic to the child. So 1 plus 2 equal 3. So man and woman make child. So that's knowledge, wisdom, understanding. And understanding, that's the order of operations of things. So in order for anything to take place, you have the knowledge, you have to think about it first. So knowledge, let's observe, you're going to think about it. Wisdom is the act of making it happen, right? Putting it together. Understanding is when it's manifested at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? And I like to also speak about that because y'all know the analogy of the 3 pigs, right? 3 little pigs. So those are mentalities of people. So you have, remember the first pig was the pig, he made straw. He made his house out of straw. That's symbolic to somebody that comes up with ideas but never does anything about it. Then the next pig, he constructed his house out of wood. Those are people that start things and never finish. And then you have the brick, which people start things and see them out through the end. So again, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. You know what I'm saying? So all of these things had, you know what I mean, like had an instrumental inspiration on my upbringing when I'm seeing these large groups of intellectual moving forces, black energy in motion. And I was fixated by it. I said, whatever they are, I need to be a part of that. So I studied that from 1988 all the way up, like I'd say till I joined the military. I joined the military in '93, and when I joined the military, again I started to meet other different people, other different schools of thought, people from different walks of life. That's when I was introduced to Islam, as far as in the East. For those that don't know or are not familiar with 5% Nation of Gods and Earths, it's an offshoot from the Nation of Islam, which is W.D. Farad, Elijah Muhammad, that vein, Malcolm X, and of course the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. So that's what we call Islam in the West. Islam in the East is traditional Islam, as we know, like the Kaaba, the Black Stone, your pilgrimage, Jumu'ah, which is praise on a Friday. So this brother that I met, he introduced me to the mosque, to the masjid, where I started going there, learning about Quran. But for some reason, the Quran never really resonated with me. No disrespect to anybody that studies Islam, because from what I see, Islam is love. You know what I'm saying? And but it just never resonated for me. I think that to me, every time I read the Quran, it just seemed like I was being threatened. Like, you better do this or else hell's a fire. You know what I mean? Like, it just didn't sit well with me personally. So then from there, I started studying Hebrew. Again, you have Hebrew Israelites, different walks of life. So you have these brothers that, you know, I'm sure y'all have seen them. They dress in purple. They're out there and, large groups. And then these other brothers that used to wear like leather belts in New York, you should see them on the corner with like bull horns. And again, they'd be threatening people. I remember one brother said, "We're gonna stop talking to y'all black folks and start killing y'all." I'm like, oh, whoa. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, whoa. So again, these things wasn't resonating to me. And perhaps they didn't do that all the time, but for my journey, I see the Most High as time and space. And for whatever reason, at that particular time and space, was when I was supposed to hear that to guide me somewhere else. So I was studying. There's a brother named Ben Ami. He has a community in Israel, and I was rocking with those brothers. So I learned how to read and write Hebrew. I was going to temple on Saturdays to Shabbat, and I studied that for a while. Then from there was one not to mention Rasta. Like I came up with Rasta, like around Rasta IJ. My father's a singer, Original Prince Jr. If y'all familiar with reggae music and Dennis Brown, he was best friends with Dennis Brown. I actually have a documentary online about my dad and his contribution and his work that he did with Dennis Brown. And I was always around that element, Rasta music. That's something that I could never deny. It was in my heart, in my veins. I just said, whatever vibration that is, I needed to know more about it. So, with all these different things, I had the Islam, the 5%. So, again, if y'all don't know about 5%, I forgot to even go on what the philosophy of 5% is. So, basically, 5% is separated into three groups. The 85%, which they say are the dumb, deaf, and blind, poison animal eaters, slaves of a mental death and power, who do not know who the true living God is, who worship but they know not what, and who's easily led in the wrong direction, hard to be led in the right, which we say is the cattle, the sheeple, as people call it nowadays, that's just going around following and don't know who they are or where they're going, they're just following. Then you have the 10%, the rich slave makers of the poor, who teach the poor lies that believe that the almighty true living God is a spook that cannot be seen by the physical eye, also known as rich bloodsuckers of the poor. Now, those are people that know, but they use it for gain. You know what I mean? They use it for their gain. So they know the truth, but they use it for devilishment. But then you have the 5%, you know what I mean, who basically know the truth. So now, the truth of themselves. And they don't believe in a mystery God. They believe of God in themselves, right? And they don't search for that. So the Son of Man have searched for trillions of years and was unable to find this so-called mystery God. So instead of wasting time searching for that doesn't exist, they started teaching that you are anything that you do, you the maker of that, right? If you make a mistake, you got to pay the consequences for that. You can't blame nobody else. So that's basically what it is at the end of the day. So I studied that for a while. Pretty much a large portion of my life. Rastas, you have a lot of people don't realize that you have different sects of Rastas. So you have 12 tribes, Rasta, who they kind of like symbolic to, not symbolic, but similar to Jewish, but they deal with Jesus. No other sect of Rasta deal with Jesus. But that's why a lot of other Rastas fight them, because they still got the same pale-faced Jesus, and they're like, yo, hold on, I thought we was going away from that. Then you have the bubble dreads, who wrap their head in a wrap. Like, I don't know if y'all familiar with reggae music and artists such as Sizzla Kalonji. So like Sizzla, he's a bubble. Then you have the ancient order of Nyabingi, which they deal with fire and drums. So they was the first ones to have the drum. So you have the three drums, the kete drum, you got the high and the low. So when you had the low drums, the boom, 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 you beating down negativity. You beating down oppression. Then you have the higher drums that's bringing your wavelengths up. You know what I mean? And then you burning out the fire. The fire is a symbolism of burning out all negativity in your life at the same time. And then you chant psalms and certain scriptures and create a vibration amongst your brethren and your sister. So that part of it, I always embrace. But then you have Haile Selassie. Now that's the part where people have their differences. Some people see him as the second coming of Christ. Some people see him as God in the physical, and some people see him as a prophet. I kind of went on the vein of seeing him as a prophet, because through his birth spawned this whole culture worldwide of one love of Rasta, and the truth is evident. So I could sit here and talk about this all day, but I'm just briefly speaking about each part of my journey. And then one common denominator, there was a common theme that I saw, that everybody that I was looking up to at one time was a Freemason. And I was like, yo, what's up with that? Because I was always taught that that was the Illuminati. You know what I mean? The Illuminati was, they were dealing with devilish men, and they might eat body parts and they might eat baby. And I'm like, you know, I'm like, yo, it's got to be evil. But, you know, Elijah Muhammad, I looked up to him, and at one point in his journey, he was a Freemason. All right? Marcus Garvey, I looked up to him. At one time, he was a Freemason. Haile Selassie, he dealt with an order, an ancient order of Freemasonry. But what was the straw that broke the proverbial straw in the camel back was the first Rasta. I read a book called The First Rasta. The First Rasta is known to be a brother by the name of Leonard P. Howell, Leonard Percival Howell. And guess what? He was a Freemason at one time in his life. So I was like, yo, I want in. I want to learn. And if I see any baby eating, I'm out. You know what I'm saying? I was like, anything that was crazy, I was going to be out. But I wanted to give it a try. And in 2000, I want to say 7, I met a brother I worked with. And he was like, yo, you got to know when to be one. And he got me in. I was initiated. And I took it to the highest level, 32nd degree, Knights Templar. And I got to say, it was positive the whole way up. Like I said, a Rasta would have been in here and been like, oh, okay, y'all all right. But I will say this, different orders do their own thing. I'm just talking about Prince Hall, the African Lodge, what I saw on that part of my journey. And I'm gonna be honest with you, this is being taped, the video. People gonna hear this and see this and be like, you a Mason? Like, I don't make it publicly known. But I'm 50 years old right now, and you know, I'm like, you know, I'm a grown man. You know what I mean? If you don't like me because of something I studied, then you wasn't my real friend to begin with. And I've actually lost friends that did hear about it and said, oh, you went in a temple? Oh, I can't be cool with you. I'm like, word? Like, as positive as I've been in your life all these years? You know what I mean? So
I think that all stems from a misunderstanding and fear.
Fear.
And I'm very happy that you was able to talk and tell your journey, because your journey is a journey that's here in this book.
Yes, sir.
You know, it's your testimony, it's your what you see, your view, and the knowledge that you picked up over the years.
Indeed.
And it's vast. Like, you know, I can relate to a lot of the things that you're saying, in the sense that I was put onto the 5% Nation by a brother named Culture. So you talked about 1 being the knowledge, 2 being the wisdom, 3 understanding, and 4 is the culture.
Right.
And so I feel like that's really and 4 is also symbolic of foundation. It's a square. You know, you got to crawl before you can walk. The child is going to be a baby. They're going to crawl before they stand up. I love, one thing I loved was just learning the numbers. I didn't, study very deep into it. But this is a question I have for you, because I didn't put the alphabet to memory, but I know there's various lessons, and a lot of these lessons came from the Nation of Islam and then to the Nation of Gods and Earths. But these were oral lessons that people would speak to each other, and then you have to memorize it. So how do you feel about some of this stuff? In a sense, like being put in books, because now there's books that write about it, but I know there's a certain time it was very much so a living culture of like, oh, you meet the brother, then this is your person that kind of, helps you learn. But do they give you paperwork, or I feel like some things are, not necessarily supposed to be written down. It's supposed to be written down in here. So could you just talk about that, like getting the knowledge from word of mouth, being around people, versus in a book, or even now how people are getting it through AI and things like that?
Right. That's a very good question. So how we got it back in the 80s, because I got my knowledge itself in 1988, and how it was done back then was for the math and the alphabet. Like you said, knowledge, wisdom, understanding, culture, freedom, power, refinement, 6 is equality, 7 is God, 8 is build to destroy, 9 is born, 0 is cipher. So and everything else after 9 and 0 is a combination of each number. Again, you repeat it. So that's why they say 9 is the highest number. There's also been a debate about 0 and 9. 0 and 9, which one is higher? Because to me, 0, as they say, Ian Soph, the beginning and the end, all and nothing. You have to have nothing before you can have 1. You know what I'm saying? Before you have, and then also it's a pie. So if you have a pie is a circle. After you start splitting up the pie, now you got 1 out of that pie, 2 out of that pie, 3 out of that pie. So, but to answer your question, how we got it was you have the words, now I'm understanding, for instance, and you would have to go out and go in a dictionary and define it yourself. So, but later on, somebody used to give you a paper with it already defined. You know what I'm saying? So, as far as the math and the alphabet, you were supposed to go out there and have your own, make your own decision, your own definition, get your own definition. But as far as the lessons are concerned, the 1 to 10, who's the original man? The original man is the Asiatic black man, and make it the owner, the cream of the planet, her father, civilization, God, and the universe. That's the first degree in the 1 to 10, which is called the student enrollment. So they used to give out the student enrollment, and if you couldn't study the student enrollment and memorize that, then it make no sense that you continue on, because after that, you got the 1 to 36, the 1 to 14, the 1 to 40, and then the solar actual facts. And if you can't memorize 10, you ain't gonna be able to memorize 40.
But let me stop you there, because now you talked about how the brothers used to erase what's on the board.
Yeah.
And then this is like a whole parallel curriculum, or different,
Right.
And a lot of people don't know the influence of 5% on hip hop. I mean, people know who were around, but a lot of people today don't really know about that. Like a lot of the, like even KRS-One, Knowledge Reigns Supreme 1. That's
Right.
even speaking to that effect. Wu-Tang Clan, so many.
Big Daddy Kane,
So many. I'm sure you can go along the list, but I guess I'm wondering how is the 5% Nation similar to Freemasonry? Is it similar in any way?
It's similar. The only similarity that it has. But first, before I go there, I just wanted to just finish answering your question that you asked me the first time about oral, transcribing it orally as far as paper. So I was saying the math and the alphabet, you got to study that yourself. The lessons is written already. It was originally written from NOI, W.D. Fard, originally had this curriculum, as you said. And the father, Clarence 13X, or Allah the Father, he edited them and changed out some things. So a lot of the lessons, they're not the same. There'll be a little word that changes everything. So that's the answer to that question. And then your second question was, repeat that again for me, brother.
I think the question was just around.
It's from similarities with Freemasons.
Yes.
Right. So the only thing that's similar is the fact of question and answers, and it's a street fraternity. You could call it a fraternal organization as far in that regards, because you have the musical fraternity as well, but it ain't officially a fraternity, if you get what I'm saying. It's actually opposites, because the opposite of it is Masonry keeps secrets, and that's the science between them and the 5% Nation was like, no, we bringing the knowledge out, taking it out of the mosque and bringing it to the people. So the father, what he used to do was he's like, who's teaching these people in the drug dens and in the gambling halls? So he would go out there where, as an NOI member, wouldn't be allowed to go there. So they just missing out the knowledge. So he cleaned up a lot of these brothers, single-handedly. So they're opposites. But some may say some things, you can't cast pearl before swine, and you want to be like the letter K in the word knowledge. The letter K is silent. So you can't teach everything to everybody. Peace.
So they're still, they're still dealing with this esoteric knowledge, but however, one is going into the streets to spread it, and the other is keeping it in the temple.
Indeed.
Okay, so yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at, because it's all use of symbols. I mean, that's just the part that fascinates me, and I want to get into a little bit of these questions that I have, and then we can open up to the floor. What was your process for writing the book? Because there's so many different uh, essays in here, and I want to just read a few of the names of a few of them, just so people can hear the depth and the breadth of it. You have what is mathematics? Yeah, unified field theory. Black woman, co-creator of the universe and mother of all nations. In mathematics section, you have the science of numbers, Pythagorean theorem. 10 is the perfect number, constant elevation. Chess, the game of life. Right, just diet. No to meat. The 7 characteristics of a wise man. You have philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey. You have ATOM, Adam, the original man, and ADAM, the pale man. 5%. What is God? What is the devil? Cain and Abel. The Ark of the Covenant. It's so much here, you know? So, but I did read those out of order. I will say you did start from the symbolism of the egg.
Right.
So, what was your process for writing the book? How did you choose what you wanted to select? You know, how did you choose what you wanted to be in here? Because it's so much here.
Right. Well, as I said earlier, it was going to be a thesis. It was going to be a bunch of different books, a compilation of different books. And you have Right, Just Diet, as you said. You have knowledge. You have the mathematics. And then I was like, you know what? Let me do a DVD. You know, DVDs back in the day. You know what I mean? Let me do a DVD. And then I just got tired of unintentionally procrastinating. So I just said, you know what? It was I don't remember it was actually 2012 New Year's. That was my 2012 New Year's resolution that I'm gonna put this book out. So all the compilations, all the different, I just put it all into one. So it was definitely years of different studies, and I just chose the best, most interesting that I figured that I wouldn't overwhelm the reader with too much stuff. And like I said, it's easy reading, and a lot of people give these to their children and teens. It's good for, it's just, like I said, the beginner's guide to brain expansion. Because after you read this, you definitely gonna want more.
I do like the way you said that. You know, it is, I would like, if people could look at it, there's not a lot of text. There's a lot of images here in the book. And it also is something that you can pick up and put down. You don't have to read it necessarily from cover to cover, although you might want to. It's something you can refer to because of all the various topics and headings that are in the book. So my next question was, speaking of some of these passages, let's get into some of our favorite passages from the book, favorite essays. I know I had one which was, I alluded to it just now when I talked about the symbolism of the egg, right? And I found that you related the egg in the fact that the egg has 3 parts to the egg. You have the outer shell, you have the white, and then you have the egg white, and then you have the yolk. And so all of these things you were saying was symbolic of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. The knowledge is a surface level knowledge without that experience. You know, so once you get under the surface, then now you're having an experience with, you know, the egg white. That's your experience, which is the wisdom. But really, what you're looking for is to get to that yolk. The yolk is the understanding and the application of knowledge, and that yolk is that chicken. You know, the chicken is everything is infinite creative possibilities there. That's the culmination. So I thought that was wonderful, and you guys may want to. I'll open it up. He has a lot of pictures here,
You know, you have egg, and then there's an egg wrapped around with the serpent. You can get in, talk about that a little bit. But even right next, he has a periodic table, and then he has in the beginning. And it's kind of like a parallel between the Genesis story and actual science, protons and electrons and neutrons and cell birth, you know. And so I found that fun. I found that very fascinating. I like that you are connecting culture. You're connecting science and spirituality. That's what's been disconnected with the religion and trying to confuse people. So it seems like your whole life, and I can relate to this very much so, is you're trying to find the common thread between all of them. Indeed. And I think organizations like the 5%, Freemasonry, even Rasta have tried to synchronize or look at a lot of different information and make sense of it for people. So I can see how you did that. Just showing who is the original man, now the black man. All right.
Absolutely.
His images are very, very, very powerful here. I had one more that I wanted to mention. I thought it was okay. I don't remember what page, but I remember it. And this is also a testament to how good symbols are as a teaching mechanism. Because I was trying to find the page to read it, but I realized after I read it, it was already in me. So I don't even actually need to look at the page. It was the one where you talked about the sun, the yellow sun, the blue water, and how they create the green vegetation on the earth. Indeed. I thought that was beautiful. Also going with that number 3, with the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. It's like the sun, he used the analogy of the sun making love to the ocean, the waters, and then producing the green vegetation. Right. And you look at the colors, it's right in line. When you combine yellow with blue, you get green. Green, right. And so he said that's no mistake. So we have out in the world all the lessons that we need. Like, we don't have to look outside of ourselves, outside of nature, outside of ourselves to find, like you said, the dogma or mystery, type of understanding. So I thought that was beautiful. Those are some of the ones I like. Thank you, brother. And I think these are lessons that people can take with them. And like you said, this is something you could teach a child. Right. A child, you could even show it to them, with the crayons and make it a whole project. So I think it's phenomenal what you did with this book, brother. I wish I would have finished it before I came to discuss, because as I was reading it, this is something where you just read it and then you have to sit there and meditate. Even some of the things you're saying, it may challenge people's preconceived notions or their own beliefs, but give it a chance, sit with it, do your own research, as you always say, and I appreciate you. And I would like to hear from you. What are some of your favorite essays in here?
I like it all, but if I could pick 2, I definitely like the Cain and Abel analogy in the scriptures, because the scriptures is really a bunch of stories that's intertwined in allegory. So the problem is, again, it's a sensitive subject. You know what I'm saying? People, no, that really happened. They really walked on water. You know what I mean? Everything is real at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? That's for me. That's what works for me. Reality works for me. So, to answer your question, again, Cain and Abel. So it was an allegoric story. Cain killed Abel. Cain, if you look up the word Cain is a crutch. So Cain is you not taking responsibility for your own ways and actions. You leaning up upon something. It's the opposite of being able to do something. You know what I'm saying? So that was the analogy of Cain and Abel. You want to be able. You know what I mean? You don't want to be Cain. So that's the science when Cain killed Abel. So you could read more about that in the book. And my second one is that I really love is the science of Adam. So they say that all life started from Adam and Eve, right? So again, everything is real. It's not ADAM, it's ATOM. It's an atom. That's where all things exist from. Because remember, solids, liquids, and gases, that's reality. So us as living beings, we started as a gas, then liquid, sperm, egg, traveling, then bone and flesh became the solid. So
Knowledge, wisdom, understanding. Once again.
right, exactly. So that's the atom. All things started from an atom, and the difference between a solid, liquid, and gas is all the same thing. It's just the vibration of the frequency. One vibrates faster or slower than the other because the solid, liquid, and gas is the same thing. That's why they say when you return to the essence, when somebody returns to the essence when they pass on, they go back to the gas form. That's what people say, oh, I felt something. People call it the spirit. You know what I mean? I felt my granny or something, you know what I mean? Because they still exist in the gas form. Now, if you have the science, we could debate reincarnation, that could be debated. I did an actual school essay about reincarnation because, again, it's atoms. And they say that the same atoms that's in a desk could be in, if that was in Jesus or, you know what I mean, or somebody else that you might know, like wherever they may fall at the time. But Adam, and then that's the beginning of life. And then what is Eve? Eve is an atom that's been evenly split because we know the science of duality. So the whole universe is based upon duality, right? The feminine and the masculine principles, yes, of the universe. So that's man and woman, masculine and feminine. That's Adam and Eve. That's one of my favorites. Peace.
Yeah, this is.
You can relate.
I sure can.
It did.
Hey, we gonna get you. Oh wow, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. So, what do you say to people who hear what you're saying? They say, "Well, this is the English language. Maybe the etymology is a little bit different."
Mm-hmm.
Because this is something that often comes up, when someone, with text, someone would say, don't say good morning, say grand rising.
Right.
Because you don't want to be mourning, death of
Right.
someone or something.
Right.
But that's the mourning of MOURNING versus MORNING. But then they say, well, English is a trick language.
Right.
A language with a lot of trick knowledge. How you can say one thing and it be the opposite,
Right.
or something different. Read and read, and so on and so forth. We got silent letters. It's a hodgepodge language. So, what do you say to people? I mean, to me, this is what I think is you learn things in symbols and parables and proverbs and allegories, and so the truth of it becomes apparent by the application of it, in a sense. It's like, okay, if you can make sense of it and make a practical use out of it in your life, then that's as real as it truly needs to be. But for some people, like you said, they're like, well, no, these are real people, and what do you mean that ADAM and ATOM? Is this some big conspiracy? Okay, so like, what do you say? What do you say to those people?
Well, first of all, as you said, etymology. As you say, you can have one word that means two different things. Brother by the name of King taught me that a long time ago about pray. You know what I mean? Got a word that sounds the same, but it's spelled two different ways, PREY and PRAY. So he was like, I pray like an eagle. I'm like, what you mean you pray like an eagle? He said, you know how they teach us to pray with our eyes closed and our hands together? I pray with my eyes open and my talons out. If you pray, you say, I want to get a job. You go out and get that. Put your eyes on it first and you go out and get that. You go out and get that. And then also, to piggyback off what you were saying, etymology is all about your intention. So even though something may sound the same, like he said something, it's your intention when you meant it. You can have people from other countries that curse somebody out by accident, but he meant something good from his heart. So what happens there? You know what I'm saying? And then also, that brings me to one of the other symbols on here, which is the symbol of the Om. So the Om, because guess what? This goes deeper than language and words. It's about vibration, right? So that's what the beginning of life is, a vibration. Once the sperm hits the egg, it begins to vibrate first, and then spins at a terrific speed, and then fertilizes and becomes flesh and bone. Again, a vibration of the universe, the planets. Whenever islands are formed, it starts with a vibration and they become cohesive and become islands. So Om is, again, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. It's O, H, and an M. So the O from the back of your throat, O, the H from the middle, and the M is when you purse your lips. So it's Om. So that vibration. So then we go beyond words and communicate through vibration. So because again, these languages and texts is what separates. You know what I'm saying? I've traveled a few places, and everywhere I travel, I try to learn the dialect. And I've learned that language is a barrier and also a bridge. So if you learn, people that wouldn't normally speak to you, when they hear you speak any language, they're like, oh, okay, you know what I mean? Because Asians, like, not Asians, like it's Chinese. My great grandfather's Chinese, and Asians, if you notice, they're aggressive. You know what I'm saying? And they, to themselves, they rarely marry outside their race. You know what I'm saying? Ethiopians also, you know what I mean? A lot of people within themselves, you know what I'm saying? They don't, because again, we could get to the roster, because you know that Haile Selassie was the 227th ruler, 225th emperor. There were two females, Yodit, and I can't remember the other one at the moment. But it's an unbroken chain. No other colonies or anything came in and infiltrated that bloodline. You know what I'm saying? Because of that. So I'm saying all that to say, once they hear me speaking a certain, you know what I'm saying, speak a little Amharic or speak a little Chinese, they be like, oh, who wouldn't have normally spoke to you, they speaking to you now. Like I used to go to a Chinese restaurant just to do that. I go in there and be like, Lo jie banga masifa na. They be like, what? You speak that? Yeah. So again, it's about vibration and intention. So that's to answer your question about the etymology and the separation of language. Peace.
Yes, I think these conversations are very, very interesting to me. And it's like, it's levels of understanding. Is what we're learning is that there's levels of understanding. Because it's like, I know when something is going over your head, a lot of times people have a tendency to dismiss it. Or if they can't quite follow the linear, we're taught to look at things in a linear fashion, the linear logic of something. But if that combination is not just directly like A, B, C, D, E, then a lot of people can't follow it. So how do people take your book, you know, because when they read this book, their mind, say I have some knowledge of a lot of this stuff, but not everything in here, not in the detail, the way you compile it, your specific slant on it. But so it's like refining my knowledge by reading this book. But I know if I just came in, didn't have no knowledge or anything, you know, this book could possibly like blow my brain might explode because it's like, yeah, you know. And so like, but I will say, it may feel that way, but the way you write it, it is very reader friendly. The pictures are there, and you do go from. There's a process how you build up your thoughts throughout the book as well. But how can people, you know, learn? How can they move from knowledge to understanding? You know, say they read your book and they want. I know you did put a reading list at the end. So what are your suggestions, you know, for people to learn when they read your book? How can they add, you know, in their life to enhance the experience?
Right.
Because I guess my point is they're gonna feel like doing something. This type of book that makes you feel like, okay, I gotta do something. Like, you know, what should they do? What can they do?
Right. So as you said, the way I wrote it, it was a build up. It's a journey. So I started out with a bunch of phrases, a series of phrases. just to get you warmed up, and then take you through. And along the way, you might see certain things that make you want to go and explore more on that particular subject. That's why at the end I put a list of suggested reading that could, again, enhance you on your journey. Um, the first book that I read was from the Browder Files.
Yeah, that's yeah.
The
That's
Browder Files.
I love. Shout out to Tony Browder.
Yeah,
Definitely.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. That was my first book that took me to, you know what I mean, out of just kind of waking up my consciousness. And then As a Man Thinketh is another book. And the companion book to As a Man Thinketh is At the Feet of the Masters, which is, again, very small. As thin as A Man Thinketh is that small little book right there. And then I started diving further, Philosophies and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. That's a great book. During your journey, you know what you want, what's magnetizing you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, everybody, many paths to the same goal. So what's good for me may not be good for you. Because guess what? The truth is relative, right? So there's not just one truth. People argue that, like, yo, there's only one truth. There's many truths, which is indicative upon you. So you and I could be sitting in the same room, right? You saying you cold, I'm saying I'm hot. Who's lying? Who's telling the truth? Because I see your goosebumps, you see my sweat. So, you know what I mean? So it's your truth. So once you're on this journey, you'll see. Oh, I like what brother said about Rasta. Let me learn a little bit more about Rasta. I like what he said about Nation of 5% God's and Earth. Let me learn a little bit more about that. So I used to be strictly God's and Earths. I'm at the point right now. I'm not in no category. Like, I graduated that school of thought. I no longer consider myself a representative of, like, I don't represent the Gods and Earths. I can tell you what I learned along my way. I visit the school, I got nothing but love for the brothers, but I continue on with different things that they might not necessarily agree with. So I just became my own man. Let's put it that way. I became my own God. You know what I'm saying? Where, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't care about the judgment of others. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Like, I got tired of that feeling. You know what I mean? And that's with all of them, with Rasta, Christian, with everything. You always have a group of people within that. Because again, 85%, the 10%, and the 5%, that's with any circle that you encounter. That's with Christians, with anybody. You're going to find the majority, they're just following, they just here. The 10% that's there, that's using it for their gain. And then you got the real true and living. And I like to say, like, how you know a real Rasta is by their smile. I know you'll know what I'm talking about. When y'all meet a Rasta and y'all see a certain smile, you be like, you know what I mean? That speaks volumes. You know what I mean? It's beyond the rhetoric that people are saying, because again, everything is a vibration. You know right and wrong because you know what it feels like. You know what I mean? So yeah. So in a nutshell.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much. And my last question before I open it up to the floor. And this is a very fruitful conversation. This is my type of conversation.
Yes, sir.
I would say. And I look forward to speaking with you a little bit afterwards as well. So your book is self-published, like you said. You published it 2012.
Yes.
So I want to know, it's 2025 now. You said this is your first book talk. So
right.
What from 13 years of from publishing the book to here, what was that experience like, and what finally got you here, and things like that. I want to know about that.
Yes, sir.
And then also I want to know, what is the importance of your book being available in a store like Sankofa, in black bookstores and local bookstores, and just on shelves? What's the importance of it being there versus only, having it online, things like that?
All right.
So that 13-year process from then to now.
All right. Well, so you have what's Kindle Direct Publishing right now. Before that, it was called Create Space. So I'm from the Create Space time, and I just wanted to just write a book. And after I've completed the book, I didn't do much promotion. I didn't really push it out. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't really confident in my own works. So because you know what I mean, like the black community, kind of jokingly, we clown each other when we want to excel. You know what I mean? Oh, this nigga want to write a book. Oh shit, this nigga want to write a book. Like, you know what I mean? Like, who he think he is writing a book? You know what I mean? So I kind of was like shielded it, kind of like, you know what I mean? And again, I've reached the stage where right now I'm my own man. I don't really care about how they feel about that. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I wrote a book. Yes, I'm proud of it. Like, you know what I mean? I stand on that. You know what I mean? So that's the difference between that and now. Because now it's been selling out. You know, I've been getting a lot of sales. I sold a few here. Blue Nile sold out twice. I have it in New York. I have it in Florida. It's available on Amazon, books, Barnes and Nobles, Target, and it's been doing well. And the difference is, I promote it now. You know what I mean? Thank you. I promote it now. So, that comes with just confidence. You know what I mean, in your work. There's other things that I do. Like I said, I make film. I produce. I make beats. My dad is a singer. My sister's a singer. My children sing. My son was discovered by Offset. He was signed to QC Records in Atlanta. So music and creativity, I'm surrounded by that, and I'm honored and privileged to be a part of that. And again, the difference between now and then is I promote it now. And your second question was, what's the significance of it being in a black bookstore? Just to be able to commune with one another. I'm from the old school, so I like to have a physical copy of a book and sit down and read. I mean, if people want to go, I get the Kindle thing and the online reading thing, but I just like to just have a book in my hand. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, because reading is a part of eating. It's digestion. You know what I'm saying? It's how you feed your mind and your soul. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, people like ready-made meals and, you know what I mean, and freeze-dried stuff and all of that, but it's good to have a nice home-cooked meal. So a book like this in your hand, like books like on your shelf, is like a home-cooked meal. And being able to come in a bookstore as people, not just online, we're communal people. You know what I mean? Us as Africans, we communal people. We used to be we're tribal. We used to be around our people. We all in the same room right now. We might not talk to each other. You know what I mean? There's other people in this building right now. We haven't said hi or talk to each other, but it feels good to know that they're here. You know what I mean? So that's what's good about having a black bookstore. I hope to always see it. Bookstores around. That's why I frequent it even before my book was in here. I came in here, and I support. I think that it's very important for that and pass that on to your children, people that you meet. Just go meet at the bookstore. That's why the location is good, because you're next to, historic Black College, Howard, and people come here, they kick it, and there's this bookstore. Because I heard about Sankofa before I ever moved to DC. I heard, there's this bookstore called Sankofa, son. You gotta check it out. And I made sure I checked it out. So the name ring bells and the vibration. It's like it has the number one thing they said, yes, we can buy books anywhere, but the best thing that they said, it has a very good vibes here. The energy, yes. And that comes with having a black bookstore and having black books here and being a part of it. So.
Yes, man. I appreciate you for being here, Brother Kassan. This was great, and I appreciate you. I applaud your effort and your persistence and following up and staying there, not drifting, because we get requests all the time for books to get in the store. And we can't always get to it as quickly as we would like.
Right.
But those ones who, it was your time, my brother. You know what I'm saying? Your time had come. You had the stars had aligned for you to be in here, and everything worked out for this date. And this is a date in history. I'm happy to be the one to interview on your first book event, and I'm happy that this book is out here, for people to stumble upon. See, They say don't judge a book by its cover. However, we all are looking at book covers to see which one we're going to open up. Okay.
Right. That's true.
And so,
Very true.
if you see this book, you may not buy it, but I know one thing: you're gonna look at it.
Right.
I know it caught my eye.
Yeah,
Right.
you either gonna be like, you know what, I'm not opening up that book because I'm not quite ready, or you're like, oh yeah, this is a book I'm about to open up and dive into. So I appreciate that, and I did want to open it up to the floor for questions. Does anyone have any questions? Yes. I knew you had a question. You had several questions.
Please.
So when can we expect a documentary from you? Because you mentioned you graduated from film school
Yes.
like 2 years ago.
Yes.
So are you coming out with new projects as far as that?
Yes. I share my. You can find me on YouTube. Actually, YouTube. Kason the Jeweler. I have a few documentaries out there, but I have a trail out right now for. It's called Seeking to Find What is God, which is kind of like an advanced level to this. So, like I said, it's more of my own journey as well that I found. It didn't start out to be my own journey. I was just like wanting to hear other people's opinion. I have interviews from people on the street, everyday people here in DC, in New York, and also I just came back from Ghana. And I got some interviews over there in Ghana as well. I spoke to some tribal people, some reverend over there, just to see how the truth overlaps. So I have that. I'm actually on part 3 of that, and I'm shopping it to film festivals. So y'all can check that out. You got me on socials. If you check me on social, Kason the Jeweler on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, but Facebook is more like my family, friends. I don't really post too much of my work on there. My work you can be found on IG.
Okay, so I'll follow.
Yes. Follow me on there. Y'all can reach out to me. I'm approachable. Y'all can reach me at any questions y'all may have. Y'all could ask me. So that's the answer to your question. Yes, that's me right there. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Can you actually I'll spell it for everyone. So that is KASANDAJULAH.
Yes.
Man, it's verified.
Yeah, verified.
I don't know what that means. If that means anything to you or not, but
You mind repeating that?
yeah, KASANDAJULAH. Yes. Well,
Oh, you a Libra.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you what sign you was earlier. You got Libra energy.
you have a
Oh, you
question?
said okay.
Oh, good. We have.
I'm a Libra, so-
And we do have one more question.
Okay.
Peace.
Pieces.
Congratulations, Pete.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
You know, the bravery. I know it takes a lot. You said it was your first talk.
Yes,
To
yes.
Come out. Congratulations on that.
Thank
Let me
you.
be the first of many. So I was just curious listening to everything that you were sharing here, and it actually did really spark my interest. There were a lot of things that I felt were kind of like common knowledge that you were delving into further. That was like, oh, I didn't know that. So
Right.
I'm kind of jotting notes down. So
Yes,
that's kind of
please.
cool. But I was curious, who is your ideal audience for this book, and what would you like them to take away? I think at this moment right now, from what I understand you saying, it's you would produce or offer continued readings for people to continue their journey.
Right.
But I feel like in this moment, so many people that might have not ever been gravitated towards this type of information,
Right.
or this bookstore are looking for answers right now because of the present moment where we are historically. So I'm just kind of curious in that regard, what is the trajectory? If this is the starting point, what are the next steps? So I guess it's three part, right? So
Right,
it's okay, who's your ideal audience?
Right.
Are they young men, young women? Are they both? What would you like them to take away from it, and what is the trajectory?
Okay. Thank you. So to answer your first question, the ideal audience is anybody seeking knowledge. That's doesn't have any age preference. You know what I'm saying? Because they say you can't teach a old dog new tricks, but we all are on a journey in life, and some people don't wake up till later. You know what I mean? They you know what I'm saying? And a lot of us become products of our environment. Like I said, I was telling you I was influenced by my immediate circle when I was, growing up. And you might be around an ignorant circle. And they don't, whenever you bring up something positive or anything enlightening, they shut it down and they want to talk, they change the subject. So it may take you to move somewhere else and attract a different circle, or you just, you grow on your own journey. So to answer your question, my ideal audience is young, old, anybody that's interested in sparking a thought, vibrating a brain cell. And the second question was, what's the second one?
What I mean, I guess if there were one, if you could, I guess you could summarize it in one sentence. What would you like someone to take away?
Take away, right? So to take away would be, like I said, I would want somebody. It's my hopes that at the end of you reading this book, you crave it more. Like you now saying, okay, yo, I never thought about that like that before. You know what I mean? And if this is your first book that sparks your brain cell, you want more books now. You find a black bookstore like Sankofa and you start buying down their shelf. You know what I'm saying? So that's really what it is, to just open your eye, open your mind, open your third eye, because they say your third eye, just eating bad food and being around, bad energy and bad vibrations, your third eye becomes calcified. So it's like when you wake up in the morning and you got that eye boogers in your eye, and it's, you gotta trick the eye boogers out, and you just start to peer open and just see the light start to shine in. And then as your journey intensifies, your eye begins to open more and more. And your third question was
Further suggested reading.
Further suggested reading. I would say I have a list in the back, but while you got me here, I'm gonna tell you what, because again, this was 2012, so I'm not even the same person that I was when I wrote the book.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was very much 5%. I would tell you to go find 5%. You know what I'm saying? But I have studied so much more since then, and I've grown so much since then. So I would suggest my first book was, like I said, From the Browder Files. That was a great book to start. The Nile Valley Contribution to Civilization was another one of his books that was great. If you really into some high science, there's some books from the Nation of Islam that you could look up as well. Oh yes, and he has these books. Those are great starting points. And again, like I said, there might be certain subject matter that stimulates you more than others. If you're looking for Rasta science, you could look up the Kebra Nagast, which tells you stories in the Bible that you never really knew about, like how Haile Selassie came through his birth line. So, and it came from King Solomon and Queen of Sheba. So when Queen of Sheba visited Solomon, they had a baby. And that baby, yes, was Ibn Hakim, son of a wise man, who from that point on was an unbroken line to Haile Selassie I, aka Ras Tafari, or Rastafari. So these, again, different paths. And if you were looking for some science, you might look for, some science books. But that's why I put the different symbolisms on the front. It's what vibrates to you. Because I've studied Zen Buddhism, I've studied traditional Buddhism, learning to sit still. Sometimes you don't even need a whole bunch of books. You just need to sit still. You know what I'm saying? And you get the answers in stillness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if you look, it's like your mind is like looking in a pond, and your thoughts are the ripples. So if you got a whole bunch of thoughts in your brain waves, and your brain is racing all day, you ain't gonna calm those waters. Once you sit down, that's why some people don't get answers till they dream, till they sleep, because that's when you finally calming down. So sit still sometimes, and like you said, after you read, you need to sit still and digest what you read. And if you are interested in the Nation of Gods and Earths, you could always look that up. There's different regents, but it started in Mecca, what they say Mecca, which is Harlem, the Street Academy, and they have classes there, and they also have them in Brooklyn, which they call Medina. They have classes there as well. I take nothing from anything that I've learned. I don't have no love lost for any of my brothers and sisters that I've encountered along the way in different schools of thought. But you could definitely start there. And again, you could reach out to me always on social media if you have any additional questions or any pointers or guidance that you may need. Please.
Can you read out the titles, the
Yeah,
authors for the
Yeah,
book?
so the ones that I brought out here were the ones that first one two he mentioned were from Anthony Browder, and the first is called From the Browder File: 22 Essays on the African American Experience. I highly recommend this book. You know, I've been working in Sankofa over 5 years. When people come here and they ask me for a book, a recommendation, and I'm like, well, what are you interested in? If they don't have anything to say after that, this is the first book I always will show them. Now Valley Contributions to Civilization, also by Tony Browder. Gives you a very good in-depth. This is a great history book. Also, a lot of pictures in here as well. Both of his books have a lot of pictures, and your books have pictures as well. I think it's very good to hit people from, the two different sides of the brain. The written side and then also the image formation side. We have this one here is the Kebra Nagast, which actually means the glory of kings. And it's a story of how the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon came together and had a child, and that child went back to Ethiopia. So, and there's actually a lot of other stories. These are certain stories that are within the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, but also Rastafarians utilize these as well because of the reference that they have for the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. And this one here is actually called The Supreme Lessons of the Gods and Earths. Okay? This is a guide for 5%ers to follow as taught by Clarence 13X, Allah. That's the one who founded the organization. So within here, you're going to learn just some of the basic information. We're talking about like the supreme mathematics, so the symbolism of the numbers 1 through 9, including 0. And then also the supreme alphabet. Every letter has its own meaning. So, and I didn't get so deep into the supreme alphabet after this conversation. It makes me want to get deeper into it. But I know I know there's certain ones like, I think it's D, Divine.
Right.
Yeah, so you met a brother named Divine. So I think S is probably sincere. Like there's certain...
Self-a-savior.
Huh?
Self-a-savior.
Okay, self-a-savior. But there's these certain words, like people, you may meet people with these different names, and it kind of goes back to, if you're like, oh, are you a 5%er, or do you study that? I'm like, yeah, because like my boy Culture, before I knew anything about 5% Nation, we had a friend named Culture. We didn't know why his name was Culture or nothing like that. We was just like, oh, that's Culture, and he was a rapper, and he was spitting knowledge like wait, what? He's literally was that person. You would hear, this is when I was in Atlanta. I went to Morehouse, and he would be on the promenade at Clark, Atlanta, just rapping with a backpack, and just like his lyrics and what he was saying was different. It wasn't just like the whatever. It was knowledge. He was talking Black history, high science. He's calling out the forces that be, and then he's even we learned later, it's like even some of the things he was even putting into his raps were some of the student enrollment lessons and things like that. But it gave him, like, I would say, like, his image on the campus was like a brother that's like, wake up! He's like that one person on the campus is like, you guys are sleepwalking into the black bourgeoisie, and y'all need to really get with this real, who was the original man? Like, he was busting in your face. It was like you said, your classmate that erased the stuff on the board and write their own thing. Like, he was doing stuff like that. So that inspired me. So this is like a full circle 360, degree moment for me, bringing me back. And I appreciate you for doing so, my brother. And we appreciate everyone for being here. We want everyone to to thank Sankofa. We want to thank Sankofa Video Books and Cafe for allowing us to be here.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
And this is what Sankofa is about. You know, we have big name books here, but also we're a community bookstore, not just a black bookstore. We're a community bookstore. We want to reach out to independent authors, people who are self-published, people who are, you know, looking to build their audience.
Right.
And, you know,
Appreciate
we
it.
can't help everybody, but we'll do our best. And this is a great addition to our shelf. So I appreciate you for being here.
Thank you, brother.
And if you had any closing remarks that you want to leave with the people,
Yes, sir.
you might want to repeat the social media, how they can find you.
Yes,
And
yes.
then, yeah, we can go on.
So I do want to add 2 other books to that book list. So y'all could also look up Niggas to Gods, was a very positive book as well, powerful, by the author's name is Akil. And then if you want to get a deep dive, like I was trying to remember the book earlier, it's called Theology of Time. Theology of Time is a very powerful book. But you got, me and myself, I had to sit on a book for like 4 years first. And I was like, yo, I ain't ready. I wasn't ready for that because it's a deep dive. So yeah, you can add those to your reading list as well. I do want to say this though. I do want to thank you, brother, for inviting me here because this actually, I'm gonna be transparent with you. I used to suffer with anxiety, right? I really had a hard time speaking in public and going to public events and talking to people. And this wasn't my idea. This was your idea. You know what I'm saying? He was like, no, we doing a book event for you. And I'm like I didn't ask for that. But I said, let me challenge myself. Let me see if I could do it. You know what I mean? Let me see if I could do it. And hopefully, you know, my nervousness didn't translate that much, you know what I mean? And I was able to, you know, get my point across to y'all. And this helped me because now I want to do another one. So, you know what I mean? So thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, we all get nervous. That's part of it. And if you don't have nothing to get nervous about, that means it wasn't worth it in the first place. So that's just showing you, you know, you on the right path. We're on the right path. And whether we make a mistake or not, it's not about making a mistake. It's about getting back up. Right.
I was gonna share. There's a saying that I tell my students, and is that.
Hold on, we're gonna get you the mic so everybody can hear you.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a saying that I tell my students is that you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great.
Right.
So you know, just
Facts.
putting yourself out there and honing, you know, and they always say the expert spends more time practicing, you know, whereas you know the amateur spends more time performing. You know? So it's just all about spending time, you know, just new iterations of yourself and studying and looking at others, and you'll continue to grow. So
Indeed. Thank you for that. Appreciate you. Yeah, when I was in Ghana just now, I was doing an interview with this roster, and he was saying the hardest thing for anybody for any great accomplishment is to start.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To start. So, and that brings us back to the analogy of the 3 little pigs.
I'm happy. I was gonna say it if you didn't, and I think it just all of these. This brings back to the point. I want to close on this point. There's, you know, they say a picture says 1,000 words. You had symbols. Before we had the alphabet, we had symbols that represent things. So that's still a communication. Even the way somebody's wearing, even the way someone is dressed is a symbol. You know. So you have symbols. You have proverbs. You have, you know, analogies. You have allegories, and these are various ways to like truncate like an immense amounts of knowledge into something very small. So even that last saying that you said, you know, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And that experts are those that spend more time practicing versus amateurs spend more time performing. You know, along with all the symbols on this book, the numbers, the symbolic nature of these numbers, the alphabet, there's so much knowledge and wisdom in a simple form, and I just think that's something that we can carry on to this day. Like you said, this was the it's like kind of a. I want you to repeat what you said again about what this book is, but it's basically a primer,
Or the beginner's guide to mind expansion.
a beginner's guide to mind expansion.
Right.
That's what I want to leave. That's what I want to leave everyone on, is that Supreme Revelations is a beginner's guide to mind expansion, and you just build out from there. That initial seed, it'll grow into a forest, if we water it and care for it. So thank you for being here, Brother Kassan.
Thank you,
Thanks
brother.
everyone for being here.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, man. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I know we